What's up, everybody? It's Jeremy here from Oceanbound, and this is part 3 of my big wing dilemma. V2 versus V3 of the Strike CWCs. Many of you guys know that the V3 Strikes were much different than the V2s. They had tighter, flatter canopies, and it was a really nice upgrade for many of us. It just felt like all around performance enhancements, and I loved them. But they had a little less low-end power. The smaller sizes were beefed up in, build-wise, and it made them a little heavier too. How would this transfer to a bigger size, like an 8? Would it make it more efficient, more performance-oriented, or would it kill all the things we loved about the CWC? And it brings us to the question of what have we liked about the CWC, and I'd say it's its ability to get up in lighter winds, and the fact that it doesn't really feel like an 8-meter. I felt like the V2 8-meter was great, but over this past year I was just thinking maybe I could get by with a little bit less, say like a 7-meter. And so I went to my wing dealer Phil at kitesight.net, and he let me try a 7-meter V3 CWC, and it was cool, but it was not the 7-meter experience that I was kind of hoping for. I was spoiled. I like the 8 meters. So this is what it's come to. This is the light wind dilemma. Do I prefer, the V2 Strike CWC 8-meter that I've had for over a year, or am I going to prefer the V3? So now is a great time to mention that FOne sent me this 8-meter to review. I really appreciate this. Thank you so much, FOne. And I don't want to mess this friendship up at all, but they did say that they wanted me to be truthful, and they really like the fact that I'm kind of trying to make my own unbiased opinions on a bunch of stuff in the industry. Well, I've kind of always had a slight bias towards F1 stuff. No secret there, but it's because I really love their wings. They don't give me perks or deals on their wings or anything like that. And now I have another reason, or bias, because, they sent me, stuff to try out. But I believe my original bias, coming from the fact that I love their wings, overrides any new biases. So I do like to keep it real, and they want me to keep it real. So let's get real. My CWC apparently is a V2. I've been told the only difference between the V1 and the V2 were colors, and there were no performance upgrades. And I've had way over 24 sessions on the thing. FOne sent me an 8-meter V3, and so now I've ridden this V3 a bunch of times, including 3 sessions where I was able to do back-to-back sessions, switching back and forth with the V2 Strike. So let's start comparing them. Starting with the shape is about the same as the V2. The differences that I could tell is that maybe, there was slightly deeper in the middle of the V2, in the very middle strut, it goes back a little farther. The V3 looks a little deeper near the side struts, kind of from the side strut going into the middle. And then maybe the V2 flares out just a little more on the wingtips. Everything else is similar. The other thing that's worth mentioning is that the V2 has more dihedral than the V3. The V3 is a lot flatter, and that's very characteristic of the smaller Strike wings too. The V3 has made some big changes as far as materials go. So the V2 has this kind of sort of double ripstop canopy. I'm not sure what it is, but I want to say, if it's the same as the other V2 Strikes, I'm guessing it's their 52-gram material that they use on kites. The non-CWC V3 Strikes have a material on the trailing edge called Nano. It's different than the rest of the canopy. Nano is a micro ripstop polyester weighing in at 55 grams, so a little heavier than last year's 52-gram canopy. It's also twice the density as far as ripstop goes, so it's smaller squares, or they may actually be rectangles, but they say that they use this because it's got increased rigidity, resistance to elongation and tears, and durability too. So the V3 CWC has this new Nano on the entire canopy, and that's whoa, different, right? And so I kind of wondered about this choice. Did they learn something about the smaller V3s because they were, first in the production line? Did they decide to use this thicker, heavier ripstop for some reason? Why did they decide to use that? It's gotta weigh more, right? So Actually, can we get a weight check here? So the FOne website says the CWCs are 3.4 kilograms, or that's 7.5 pounds. They didn't ever post the weight that I know of the V2. So to be fair, I weighed these two in my house dry with their leashes on, and the V2 weighed 7.1 pounds and the V3 weighed 7.6 pounds. The difference between the two was a 7% increase in weight. So, does this added weight help with the canopy stretch? Is this something that the CWC can benefit from? So now it's probably a good time to tell you a story about my V2 8 meter. In the first few sessions that I had my V2 8 meter, I assessed it started okay, and then it ramped up to some crazy winds. I think it was blowing like over 30 at one point. I was just still holding on to the 8 meter. Now, I love a good challenge, and it handled fine. It just like burned through my arms so quick. And I remember after that the next session, the canopy just seemed like it kind of settled in and was a lot looser than it was before. Noticeably different from when I got my wing. And it was still pretty new. I don't think this is really an F1 thing. If you're a heavier person, or if you ride your wings, powered up a lot, they will stretch faster. It's something that the whole industry, I think, is trying to address. All of my wings feel different after a dozen sessions than they do when they're new. But in the case of the 8 meter, more fabric kind of means more stuff that can stretch, and probably stretch quicker than smaller wings like my 5.5, and even quicker if you ride them more powered up. So this is a known thing, and apparently F1 is addressing this with using nano on the whole canopy. And they're also sewing in panels in specific ways, they call it sail engineering, to reduce diagonal stretching. The V3 8 meter, I've ridden maybe 7 sessions, mostly light winds, but one race I rode it in, it was blowing like well over 20. And I'm beginning to see the canopy kind of get a little looser, especially notable in the trailing edge. Now, as I already mentioned, the same thing happened to my V2. But after its initial expansion, it never really went beyond that, and it's been great. So I suspect that's probably going to be the same with the V3 Strikes, but in a back-to-back light wind session of the two versions, I did find the V3 canopy felt looser or flappier in the trailing edge region than my V2 does, and my V2 is like over a year old. All I know is they definitely started tighter than what it is now. Alright, so I could go on for a long time about the details, but, I know most of you guys don't want to watch a 25-minute video. So to cut to the chase, here are the key differences, or noteworthy things that I found between these wings, after riding them both. So the canopy tension. Out of the box, the V3 is certainly tighter than the V2, but not as tight as the smaller sizes of the Strikes, like my 5.5 meter when they're new. Maybe it's the heavier material, I don't know. The V3 after 7 sessions feels like it's, tightened most of the canopy, but the trailing edge seems noticeably flappier. For the weight or the feeling of the wing feels heavier, and I only know now that it does weigh more, and the trailing edge kind of seems heavy too, and that goes for the drift. I don't know if it's the new tail diffuser that adds the weight. I don't even know if that thing is really making a difference. It just feels heavier, but as the wind increases, that totally goes away and it becomes kind of like a new wing. You notice it most on the days when you're just standing on your board waiting for the wind. The handles are bigger and stiffer. This is hard. I'm really trying to like these new handles. I prefer them because they're more rigid, but when you compare them back to back with the V2 Strike handles, like the V2s just feel better in your hands, but you just wish they were more rigid. So they took all of the squareness out of what's in the smaller sizes of the V3s. They're now rounded handles. Alright, moving on. The hands and arm balance is really nice. The V2 strut was more or less straight. The V3 strut has a little bit of a kink in it, and that's right where the handle is, and it's just better to hold your arm, your back arm straight. This alone is actually a pretty good reason to upgrade to the V3s, because it's just a better ride. You really notice it when you're riding them back to back. So the V2 just tended to have my back arm like just bent a little bit. The V3 is just a little more comfy. Alright, light wind and efficiency. Like, this is probably what most of you guys want to know about the most. It's so different than the 5.5 meter I have, where I used to be able to use like the flutter technique, and I still kind of use it like maybe after a few hard pulls, but every time I tried the flutter technique with this new wing, it would just make a ton of noise, like a loud disturbance in the force that had no effect on my forward motion. So, you know, the scoot or the cabbage patch kind of worked well in the lightest winds, but in general, I kind of pumped it like my old, you know, 8 meter, and that seemed to work the best. I do feel like the V2 could get me up in less, slightly less. What else? The wingtip drag, it's still there. It annoys me the most in the lightest wind struggles, and definitely when there's a little bit of chop. The thing with the V3, its handling at its high end is awesome, but the V2 handled differently in lighter winds. Downwind jibes, I feel like the V2 was just way easier. It kind of just went where it wanted and needed to go. The V3 has kind of a tendency to feel like a plow when you're going downwind. I was really focusing on this for a session, eventually getting the hang of it, but you kind of need to pass it higher over your head and to keep the wing kind of horizontal as you're changing direction, so it kind of slices through the air because the profile is flatter. Otherwise the trailing edge would kind of drop and you'd like have a tendency to kind of run it over when you're coming into a jibe, or you'd start to feel like it was pushing back on you. The high end though of this V3 is great. It goes upwind way better. Riding powered was totally fine. Jumping was great on it. Like I said, I used it on a race night when it's blowing over 20 and it was amazing. You know, a huge difference from the V2 upwind. All right, so I'm trying to keep this short. Those are my observations. This thought experiment, my big wing dilemma, has brought on unexpected consequences. I do prefer these new CWC strikes, but it's like they're kind of better at some things I didn't need them to be better in, and I'm still kind of getting used to that. I think the new CWCs are excellent for bigger riders or people looking to get more performance out of their big wings. You know, if you want to race with a big wing, get it. If you're looking for the biggest wing that can get you out in the most absolute lightest winds, I mean, I'd say probably the V2 can get you out in slightly less. So, you know, its lightness too is just great for drifting on waves when it's light. I mean, that's kind of why I bought it, so I can surf waves when it's super light. So I wish I could end this here, but like, I like to ride with power in my hands, so I'm always gonna have a big wing in my quiver. But the downwind boards are just changing everything, and it's only through this like kind of big wing dilemma thought process that I've discovered that, and it's making me really question what I need. So I'm still soul searching, and it totally sucks to get what you think would be the end of your path only to feel like you just happen to be more confused than when you started. I mean, such is life, right? So I'm not sure if I'm going to be going farther in this big wing path. I think I might be done. It's run its course, but I'll let you know when I figure things out. I just hope it's like windy this fall and I don't have to use my light wind wings that much. But I definitely have some excellent choices, and I just want to say to all you guys, ride what you like. So thanks for watching, everyone. You know, if you want to see some more of my videos, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I don't post my videos anywhere. You know, I've gotten here because of people like you and the YouTube algorithm, and I am so eternally grateful. So thank you. I love this channel. I love this community and all the people that I've met on here, so don't hesitate to drop a comment. I'd love to hear what y'all are thinking, and I love learning from you all. And with that, I hope all of you guys are doing well out there. I'll see you soon on the flip, and I wish you all an awesome day. Later!